So, what do you want to talk about? A Brock Lesnar tease for him coming back to WWE, or merely a reference to a feud Cody had with him last year? Let's discuss it. I'm Ollie Davis. I'm joined by Lugo and DAD. If you haven't already, please press the thumbs up button, give us a subscribe, leave a comment down below with what you thought of this episode of last Monday Night Raw.
Very good.
Thank you. It was a pre-tape. And sending your chat gables to WrestleTalk.com/support. We'll read out every single one over $5 US. And also go over to Patreon.com/WrestleTalk to support us there and get loads of exclusive content, like bonus podcasts.
Yeah.
For stories we find interesting, but we know the rest of you won't. So we put it behind a paywall.
We're currently covering late 06, early 07 TNA, looking at their most successful rivalry they ever did for a certain period of time. Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle. And yeah, we've been really... I think, though, while that was our basis, let's look at Angle versus Joe. We have more fallen in love with the Paparazzi Championship Series.
All-time great segments.
And all the stuff with VKM.
All-time bad segments.
You have not watched the next pay-per-view yet, Final Resolution. I cannot wait to discuss the VKM segment with you.
It is a company that goes from one of the most serious, we're straight up real wrestling. We are new MMA influenced wrestling, to within the space of 4 weeks, the worst of Vince Russo.
Yeah.
And the problem there is Vince Russo taking over at that exact point. It starts to go into decline. But let's talk about Raw for now, and specifically for this opening segment. Cody Rhodes being out there in the ring. He does his usual St. Louis. It's historic. Wrestling history. My father was Dusty Rhodes stuff.
Well, the more he was referring to was that this was the building or the area where the first "We Want Cody" chant started, which led to him getting his WrestleMania main event back.
What was that? So that was post first loss.
That was post Rock, I believe. So when the Rock came in and stole the main event.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
I couldn't quite tell which one it was, but okay, that's good.
You just see Cody Rhodes in the ring and you're just like, he's probably talking about his dad.
He's probably talking about something 80s, something my brother,
something war games.
But then Gunther interrupts him because, of course, it is World Heavyweight Champion versus WWE Champion at Crown Jewel for the Champion of Champions crown belt.
I believe it's just the Champion of Champions.
Champion of Champions Championship.
The Crown Jewel Championship.
Mm-hmm. And they just go back and forth. Gunther calls it a secondary world title. Ha ha ha. Because we always used to say the World Heavyweight title was the secondary world title.
I still do.
And then Cody says, well, if I'm a secondary world champion, how come I've beaten the most dominant champion in WWE, not history, but modern history, I guess, Roman Reigns? I don't think he says Roman Reigns by name.
No.
And then he also says, so the line is, I have defeated the most dominant WWE champion, and I have dominated a beast.
Yeah, I think it was, I have slain a beast.
Slain a beast.
So this line led to a lot of speculation that, was this them teasing a Brock Lesnar return? There'd been reports like a couple of months back as well that Triple H has been like, hey, when the time is right, well, Brock's busy, Brock's Brock, but
I don't see lawsuits.
But it was like, basically, we would be open to a Brock return. But I think, though, that this was actually just a line that was slightly clunkily delivered. Because I think what Cody was trying to do was... Because Gunther's whole thing was like, yeah, you're the secondary champion. I'm a real world champion. It's nice to have you here. Thanks for the boom period. But now it's time for the real men to do the real work. And I think Cody's line was supposed to be along the lines of, you are a dominating beast, but I have beaten the most dominating champions and I've slain a beast. So... I can beat you as well. I just don't think it was delivered quite well. And when the segment then ended,
yeah, they just looked at each other. Did they even shake hands?
They shook hands.
And then Gunther walked
music
off.
Played and he walked off. And I was like, what an odd way to end the segment, particularly on that beast line, because Sean Ross Sapp was talking on the Fightful post show that he has been especially around WrestleMania weekend, persona non grata. So the way that he told it was that there would have been reports that, Brock might have an appearance at WrestleMania. And so he inquired to his contacts at WWE. They met with him in person to talk about this. Essentially, the way he's like, I don't think they wanted a paper trail of this discussion.
They met with Sean Ross Sapp. Not anyone met with Brock Lesnar.
No, so someone within WWE met with Sean Ross Sapp to tell him this, so there wasn't a paper trail of this. And they were like, he is gone. We spent a lot of money getting him out of the video game. It was a huge expense to us. And, we have, when we got through the 2K stuff, there was like lots of lists of things do not say, do not talk about. He was one of the things that were listed. Don't mention him. Don't mention Vince. And that didn't come from 2K. That came from up high. And so, he was like, I don't know if something has changed, but I can't imagine that Brock would be back until after the lawsuit is over. But that's not to say that he couldn't come back.
Yeah, and Dave Meltzer has said this from the very start. And to be fair, he hasn't said it about Vince McMahon after the January bit, because that was such a final thing he's done in the company and everything. But as you see from the Mr. McMahon documentary, the first time Vince retires, you've got Dave Meltzer there going, yeah, I think he'll be back. And then there's cut to January 2023. 23 is when he came back to sell the company.
Oh, man. Is it really?
And Dave Meltzer's like, yep. Thought he'd be back. Dave Meltzer said, look, it's wrestling. Someone like Brock Lesnar, the star power of Brock Lesnar, they're going to want him back. They're going to try and get him back if they can.
Yeah.
I think... and there was a story in like May, June, where everyone suddenly went, oh my God, Brock's on the roster page.
Oh, yeah.
And then a lot of people pointed out, WrestleTalk included, he's never been taken off the roster page.
Yeah, he was never moved to the alumni section.
But that did start a debate, and some outlets reported something along the lines of, well, never say never.
Yeah. In the same way with Brett, never say never. Warrior, Punk, never say never. Some of these people do just come back.
Apart from Vince McMahon, who I think we can all comfortably say that is a never job right there.
That is a never job right there.
It's an actual never.
And I think with Brock, it's because I would imagine the argument would be he is not named in the lawsuit.
But the Washington Post did name him.
Yeah, they could say it was him all they want. But he is not. In WWE's argument to say it is okay for us to bring back someone who is implicated within a sex trafficking lawsuit is to say, well, it's not him. You've got no evidence to show that it is him because he's not named in the lawsuit. It is an unnamed UFC fighter who just so happened to be negotiating his contract to come back to WWE when Brock Lesnar was a former UFC fighter, was negotiated to come back to WWE. Could just be a massive coincidence. Could be Cain Velasquez. We don't know.
Yeah, but just to take this segment bit by bit, it's weird because it's in relation to a Saudi thing. And I think if one funder of WWE, but let's call him a booker, because sometimes they do have direct booking influence over, we want the biggest star. Brock was there were a handful of guys who were like, you are Saudi Arabia show guys, because you're the biggest stars and you get booked for those. It was John Cena
until Hollywood told him to stop doing it.
Don't do that, John Cena. There was Logan Paul for a bit. There was Goldberg, Undertaker. Shawn Michaels came out of retirement, unfortunately, for a Saudi show, and Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, and the Saudi government. So Sean Ross Sapp had this report last week over on Fightful Select. The champion of champions that's a Saudi request. They wanted this belt. They wanted to be able to crown the champion of champions in Saudi Arabia. And basically, though, the way it is, here's what we want. You figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't Sean. Sorry, I do apologize. It was WrestleNomics, I think, or WrestleVotes rather. They were the ones who said Saudi said to them, this is what we want to happen at the show. Now you figure it out. And the way they said it was this is going to be the case going forward again. There was a period of time where it felt like the Saudi shows just stopped being Saudi shows and became just regular WWE events. But now we're going back to the era of, no, here are the things we want to happen at these shows. Now you figure it out. And maybe it is a case of, we want to have Brock on a show. You figure it out.
Yeah. Make it happen.
Yeah.
The other thing is, one part of Paul Levesque's Renaissance era that I've enjoyed tremendously is the level of detail and thought that's put into everything that's put on screen. Whether it be a lily doll in the back of a shot foreshadowing Nikki Cross coming back. Or
look, it looked like Alexa Bliss, all right?
Or just a little detail over here, not all White Six stuff, but up and down the card you have that
people
sort of
talking in the background. Like, look at the background detail they did for all the Liv and Dom stuff, and Liv infiltrating the Judgment Day and whatnot. Like, a lot of that story was told in the background of other shots.
So when you do have the last line of a Raw segment with Cody Rhodes, the face of your company, against Gunther, the other world champion, going into the biggest match of the Saudi show, it does take. You do have to give it a lot of attention.
I think
I have slain a beast.
Because he didn't need to make reference to Brock within this. Because it's not like... His whole point was like, I've beaten other champions. The most definite way to say that is I dethroned the most dominant champion. Brock wasn't a champion when he beat him last year.
Yeah.
He was a former champion when he beat him last year. So it doesn't actually have any bearing on the point that he was making, other than he is a former world champion.
I beat AJ Styles. I beat Kevin Owens. I beat Roman Reigns.
It's a bunch of names he could have said that fit that description. So I thought it was a really weird button to end on. And like as the chat pointed out before we went live as well, Seth made reference to a beast in his backstage segments.
That was weird as well. And that was about Bronson Reed.
Yeah, and there are times when they have said that WWE often will do things in several segments to kind of test the waters. That's kind of one of the running theories about this, is they put this line in there just to test the waters and sort of see, permanently online Triple H, so they can kind of see what the online reaction is to a reference to Brock Lesnar.
Well, should we see what the chat Gables have to say for themselves?
Well, you got to say for yourself. I've got this one here from Ket, who said, I don't care what anyone says, Brock is one of my favorite wrestlers, and I'd love to see him have another match against Cody in the future.
Hashtag Brock Party.
I don't think I'd want to have him... but I was going to ask you this question. Do you want to see Brock come back?
I don't want to see him at the moment. I think I'd feel too morally freaked out about it. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many people I once thought, well, I'll never get used to seeing that person in WWE again. And then it's been fine. But I don't think it's a big thing to come back from.
I'd say this is probably the biggest thing something could come back. Like, it was one thing for Warrior to come back after the heinous stuff that he used to say, like in the early 2000s, like in his blog posts or his university lecture tours that he was doing, he said some horrible, heinous stuff. But he came back and everyone was, cheered him for it. This, I think, is on a very different level to that. Not so much I don't want to see him come back. I don't think I've got an interest in seeing him come back outside of like the lawsuit stuff. So, removing that aspect of it. Much in the same way with Goldberg.
Just from a kayfabe, do I want to see?
Yeah, I'm sort of looking at the roster and being like, no. There's like 20 other guys I'd much rather see getting high-profile positions than Brock Lesnar at this point. There's 20 other guys I'd rather see getting high-profile positions than Goldberg.
But if you, and I really am removing all moral stuff here, just put that to one side.
Absolutely.
Just looking at it from a purely wrestling match perspective. Lesnar versus Gunther was reportedly one of the original plans for Mania this year.
That was going to be the plan.
If nothing happened, I would still love to see that match. A Bron Breakker versus Brock Lesnar match.
Also, just something then, like Cody saying it to Gunther, who was Brock's reported WrestleMania original opponent before it was moved to Sammy, and before Brock got removed from everything. I don't know if there's...
Bron took Brock's place in the Rumble.
That's right, he did, yeah.
Well, Dominic Mysterio was meant to have that feud with him at Elimination Chamber as well. We never got that one.
Yeah, that was the... So if everyone has forgotten what happened, is that the Bron Breakker spot in the Royal Rumble was Brock Lesnar's spot. He was supposed to be in the Rumble, but Brock got pulled from it basically the night before, because that's when all the lawsuit stuff came. So they just put Bron Breakker, literally, Control X, Control V, and put a different, different character in there instead, which is why he eliminates Dom. And then it was going to be Brock versus Dom at Elimination Chamber, and then Brock versus Gunther at Mania.
Tirolamarcus, I reckon that's how you say that. Do you think that it means something special that Gunther won every match since his Intercontinental title loss through choking out his opponent? I personally don't want Lesnar to return because of what he did. I'll just put allegedly there. But if Gunther Lesnar with Lesnar submitting would be great.
So Gunther tapping him out.
Mm-hmm.
But again, maybe because I'm just sort of looking.
Think how beat red Brock's face would go.
I guess maybe I'm just looking at this from a kayfabe. I'm just going to look at this purely from a kayfabe perspective for now. Goldberg versus Gunther. Sorry, actually, I'm not that interested in that either. But Gunther versus Lesnar is not a World Heavyweight Championship match. So I'm like super interested in seeing right now. Like I think it would be an interesting spectacle. But
I think it would massively elevate Gunther if he won.
Yes, actually, yeah. In fairness, I think that is correct. But maybe it's because looking at the two things, I'm not interested in seeing it, but I do see the value in doing it in terms of trying to build a star.
Mike says, not only did this show have 2 women's matches, they were the longest matches on the show. It's a low bar. There is no wrestling on these 2-hour shows. There's ad breaks.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's wrestling in the ad breaks.
Of course, this is a pre-taped episode, so the matches couldn't be too long for the already tired crowd. Well, I think you can still have longer matches. One day they'll get this all right, maybe, hopefully.
This show, when the crowd, like the lack of crowd reactions for things, I'm like, oh, they've already seen a 2-hour Raw.
And most of the people coming out twice as well.
Yes.
On the same night. Yeah, I don't think we can properly judge
a
2-hour Raw yet because the first one was a double taping, and we'll see in the second half of that on this episode.
Yeah.
One had the pacing issues. I think last week had too many pacing issues. This week didn't feel like anything happened.
No, this was... and I saw this from the spoilers last week, but man, this was an inconsequential episode of Monday Night Raw.
James Dobinson says, Tiffany Stratton is definitely on course for a face turn. I still think the cash-in will be on Nia, but obviously they're using Liv to make it more unpredictable. I hope the cash-in is at Survivor Series rather than in Saudi, though.
We'll have a bit more about this when we do our 3-count episode, which we recorded this morning for our predictions for Crown Jewel. And I said, my prediction was, spoilers for that episode, it's the double down, and Tiffany gets in and then is unsure of who she should cash in on. Ultimately, though, I do agree. I think it's, we're heading for a Nia cash in eventually. But I think with Liv involved, and particularly the ending of this show, I think it's quite fun to have sort of the will she, won't she on Liv Morgan.
Mike, chatting again just to say that if Lesnar does come back, I might have to stop watching WWE, which is a shame because I'm a relatively new fan. I just don't think I could do it. And Kuzu finally for now says, bringing back Brock right now would be a PR headache for WWE and it could jeopardize their current boom period. Not saying it can't happen, but it hasn't even been a year since the lawsuit. It saddens me people don't seem to care about the moral implication.
Maybe that would be the ultimate test of when you are hot, you can do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like, if they could bring back Brock Lesnar and people go like, yeah, I'll still watch the product, then they could literally do anything. Yeah.
The next show's in Saudi.
That's very true.
They can.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right, so please do keep getting in your chat gables to WrestleTalk.com/support.
And before we get into the Raw review, here's a special message from our own Sullivan Bo Brown.
Okay, I'm going to quickly tell you about the NRB Live Tour. So, NRB is going to be in Manchester on the 13th of October, and then the 15th and 16th of October, they're going to be in London, and then in Birmingham, they're going to be on the 17th of October. Okay? And you better get your tickets now because it's your last chance. It's your very last chance. Please, just get it now. Just get it quickly, now, right now. Yep, the link's in the description. Just get it right now. Okay, and also, Blair's going to be there. Laurie, me, Dom, Rosie, John, Sam C, bunch of others. Ellen from Oxford, she's going to be there too, and I've only got 10 seconds. Okay, please, just get your tickets now. Get your tickets right now. Please, get them. If you don't get them, oh, please, I'm gonna explode!
See you in the Sullivan.
Yeah. So click the link, everyone.
This episode began with, just before we get into this, I don't feel like anything of note happened on this episode.
Oh, no.
But then when I looked down at the headlines, War Raiders came back, they repackaged it. You had Jimmy Uso trying to make contact with Jey Uso. That's a huge development.
I think that's the biggest thing to come out of this episode.
Potentially a Brock Lesnar return tease. Tiffany Stratton tried to cash in on Liv in the main event. There's Is it because there's no wrestling on Raw now? Is it because I go into these wrestling shows thinking there'll be wrestling, and on Dynamite when I would watch that, I'd be like, it's probably a bit too much wrestling, and then now I'm watching Raw. Now it's 2 hours. I'm like, kind of feel like there's not enough wrestling. Where's my baby bear porridge?
German Dan said, watching 2 hour Raws feels weird because at the end of the show, you're expecting the next segment to start.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's actually quite right. Like, that's at the end of this show. This didn't feel like it had a big climactic ending to it. And I was expecting Joe Tessitore to throw to a commercial and then we'd come back and get the final hour of this show.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the proper main event. And then Sam Roberts pops up on my screen doing some Raw after post show.
Yeah, I did have a bit of a panic when I loaded this up on Discovery Plus, and it still said 3 hours. I was like, whoa, no, you told me 2!
I've not woken up early enough. Right, so Rhea Ripley opened this show. She came out. Of course, she jumped Liv Morgan, Raquel, and Dominic at SmackDown, which interfered in the Nia Jax match there.
Because it is important for us to make sure that Liv and Raquel don't look credible right out the gates.
And then Tiffany Stratton interrupts, rather than Liv Morgan and co., and she says, I've got a message from Nia Jax. If you involve yourself in her business, you'll have a big problem. And this led to Liv and Raquel jumping them both and laying them out. So there you go. They are credible.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long that lasts.
Backstage,
because there's the end of the show yet to come.
Backstage afterwards, Ripley was demanding Liv and Raquel in a match from Pearce. And Pearce is like, I can't book you. I can't book Damian Priest in that match either. We don't do that sort of stuff. But then Tiffany Stratton just walked over and started complaining as well about Raquel and stuff. And yeah, Pearce was like, tag team match players?
Yeah, he just sort of looked at Tiffany and was like, because he said it needs to be a tag team match. And Rip was like, where am I going to find a tag team partner? Tiffany Stratton walks in on the other side of the screen. And then Adam Pearce was like, well, you could be the tag team partner. A fun way to set up a Raw main event.
If the characters weren't as over as they are now, I'd be like, this is lazy. But because it's like Tiffany and Ripley, I found this quite fun.
Also, it's because it's a taped show. I think I'm more forgiving for it being a taped show because usually the Raw main event is something they've announced a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time. This one was, and we've been saying like, it's so much better than opening segment sets up a main event tag match. But they did that here, and I'm like, well, it's a tape show. So
Undertaker over there.
It's a tape show, so I'll let them get away with it. I'll let this one slide.
Yeah, because we have been rather spoiled over the last 3 weeks with Jey Uso versus Bron Breakker, Sami Zayn versus Gunther, the last monster standing match.
I would wager Jey versus Bron will be the main event next week.
Yeah. So this did feel a bit of a lame duck show. And yeah, because they were on tour in Europe. Why not just do an episode from wherever they are in Europe?
Saving it for WrestleMania, aren't they?
Yeah. We got the first match of the show, which was Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill defending their women's tag team titles against Damage Control.
Shout out to Jade Cargill, who arrived at the show dressed as Chucky.
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh, good for her. Well, it's October. It's spooky month.
Exactly, yeah.
NXT's Lash Legend and Lakara Jackson were at ringside.
Fresh from losing to Belair and Cargill in less than 2 minutes on SmackDown. So make sure they are a credible threat. They lost in like 2 minutes, or I think it was under 2 minutes on SmackDown. And my first thought was like, I bet you that Bloodline segment ran long.
When I saw them there, I thought, I just assumed you were a one and done on SmackDown.
I thought so as well. And then when they get involved in the finish, that was when it hit me. I was like, triple threat at Crown Jewel, because that's a way for the Powerbuff Girls to drop the belts without either one of them being pinned.
When Damage Control pin Lakara Jackson, let's say. I liked the way they told the story of size and speed versus strength and stuff. And there was another little detail where Jade Cargill went for she brings up Bianca Belair to slam her down to hit an opponent. But whichever one of Damage Control moved out of the way.
Kairi Sane
got out of the way in time. And Jade's like, oh no. Mm-hmm. But then Io Sky really quickly pops up Kairi Sane, and Kairi hits like an insane elbow.
That was a brilliant spot.
That was great, but it was like, not just was it athletically impressive, it told the story of, well, here's two people who are bang on the same page. here's two people who are having issues.
But they are also the 2-time women's tag team champions. They should be better at this by now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to tell the story of these two women don't work well as a tag team when they are 2-time women's tag team champions.
Destroying their opposition in 2 minutes.
Won very easily on SmackDown.
Well, I probably shouldn't tell a 3-month story over a year, should you?
Just as well, because the chat has corrected me, Belair was also dressed as Chucky.
Oh, okay. Not corrected, just added.
Well, I mean, correct. I did say only one of them was.
Then the match finish. I was getting into the match, you see. I was quite disappointed overall in this match.
Yeah.
Because it has been built for about 6 weeks. And we get to this bit here. I'm like, okay, I'm getting into this, especially after that pop-up elbow bit and the miscommunication. But then Damage Control are outside, and one of Lakara Jackson and...
Jakara Jackson.
Jakara. And Lash Legend, of course. Hit Io Sky. Io Sky goes, no. Sells over to the apron. Bianca Belair gets her inside. KOD win.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I thought there was another third to this match.
I was expecting that as well, but I think that's the ad break curse, isn't it?
So yeah, bit underwhelmed in the end.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. That was a fine for a Raw TV undercard match. Problem is that that's fine when you have then a big main event, but the main event also felt like a Raw undercard match with its finish.
It's like last week when they built up Jay versus Xavier Woods. I was like, oh yeah, let's have a bit of this. Title match. Oh, you get 3 minutes of the wrestling because the rest is in commercial breaks. But even with commercial breaks, it only goes 7 minutes.
Yes.
It's like that's not enough time to tell the story you want to tell.
Not particularly.
But yeah, the sort of your theory, and I agree, is that this will turn into a 3-way with all 3 teams.
Yeah, you can either do it at Crown Jewel or do it on TV. But it seems like a way to, kind of like what they did at Clash of the Castle. It's a way for the Powerbuff girls to drop the belt without actually having to be pinned.
Finn Balor and JD McDonough turn up backstage. Finn wants a rematch against Priest. Bloody hell. But Pearce won't give it to him because he's like, I should probably book something to do with the tag team titles.
Adam Pearce was like, hang on, are you the tag champs? Oh, you are? I forgot. Yes, we should probably do something about that.
So Pearce announces that he's booking this tag title tournament, and then Liv walks over as well and is like, hey, guys, this is Raquel.
And Carlito goes, blah. Apple pours out of his mouth and stuff. Yeah.
So Carlito, excited, probably going to do a little storyline romance.
Yeah.
If I'm Braun Strowman, I'm not happy about that.
Why?
Why aren't they going out in real life, him and Raquel?
Yeah, but it's a work, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I bet Mark Maron thought it... Mark Maron? Mark Maron.
Mark Maron.
Getting Glow and WWF's Attitude Era mixed up again.
Mark Miro.
Mark Miro. Yeah, I bet he thought it was a work. I bet.
But yeah, but they didn't.
I bet Kurt Angle thought it was a work.
Well, yeah, okay, that's a better example because it's not like they partnered like Sable with Brock.
Yeah, but there are
they just did lots of storylines where they're like, Sable is going to dump you, Mark Miro.
I bet Kevin Sullivan thought it was a work. There are so many examples of storylines turning into real life romances.
Old wrestling. It's a nicer backstage atmosphere now. They just play PS5 and just, high five each other. They're not stabbing each other like The Undertaker wishes people still were backstage when men were men.
So it looks like Finn is also going to be obsessed with getting a rematch against Damien, which I am all... I know this is going to sound weird because I've been down on that. I am all for. But he shouldn't get it.
Yes, my worry is that he will. There's a segment later on where Damian Priest is chatting with Rhea Ripley and she was like, yeah, you don't need to focus on Finn Balor anymore. It's like, yeah, I know, because I've beaten him a load now. It's time for me to focus on being the world champion. And then I'm looking at this world title picture that's got currently a Cody Rhodes, a Goldberg, and a CM Punk. And I'm like, I don't think there's room for a Damian Priest in this currently for the next few months. Yeah. So that smells to me that you're heading back for another Finn Balor match.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly. We get a really fun American-made video promo after this, just getting over the gang.
Yeah, get some on TV without having to have them wrestle. I didn't mind this at all.
they're going into the tag title tournament, I guess.
Did they show brackets for the
I
tag
didn't see brackets.
Yeah.
If they did. One part I've just written down here. One of the creeds criticizes people who want handouts.
Yeah.
American made.
They're going to be American heroes.
Then we got Bron Breakker explaining his heel turn on Jay.
Well, and now we know why that he's turned heel as well. It's because Jay's sucking off his family.
Are you 100% certain?
It's the line he said. He said, "You've been sucking off your family for years."
Are you sure it's not
leeching
or living?
The chat be able to help me out, but I'm pretty sure he said you've been sucking off your family for years.
Because this was a pre-tape, and I do feel like they would have done another line. Can we just... Did anyone else hear Bron say that Jay has been sucking off his family
for years? Yep, Brandon, it is the line he said.
Okay, well, great. That is excellent.
It is the most Scott Steiner Bron Breakker has felt in a promo.
Sucking off his family!
Don't go over there and sucking off your family!
And there's so many of them.
You did a whole video about like the massive family tree that it is. Knackered at the end of it.
In a row. So the basic, you got to do some mental gymnastics here. It helps if you just realize they didn't know they were going to do this when Bron turned babyface 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So Bron said he lost the IC title to Jay. He came out to say congratulations and pay him respect for being the better man on the night. He's turned heel on him since, though, because Jay didn't give him the respect back in that segment.
Yeah, he didn't say, "I also respect you."
I mean, he said yeet. And to be fair, Jey Uso forgot most of his lines that night.
Yeah, I think it was a bit harsh on Bron, actually.
Yeah.
Did you see the start of that promo?
I feel like it was obviously a change in direction.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
Bron was going up into the Gunther title picture. Maybe not for Crown Jewel, but, get it bubbling for a Survivor Series or whatever. But Goldberg's come in, and that's bumped Bron to the mid-card.
Two key lines from this, outside of, the chat of making sure that I've got the wording of this right. You've been sucking off your family's legacy. Which, even if that is the full thing, I would change the first couple of words of that. Then the other one is the ending line, which is, "I'm coming back for my title, and your family cannot save you from me." They announced later in the show it is Bron versus Jay next week for the IC title in the rematch. So your theory was that, because Jimmy was on this show, that maybe Jimmy does save Jay next week, and that's how Jay retains the title. Yeah,
so later on, sorry, we're jumping around a bit, but it is all interconnected. Jey Uso's backstage, he opens his dressing room door, and in those sort of those great Bloodline bits last year where it was just 1 minute long shot and it tells so much. Jimmy's in the locker room, he stands up and goes, "Got a minute?" And Jay walks off.
Nope.
Nope. Yeet. No yeet.
No yeet.
And then later on, I didn't think you needed a second one, but Jimmy also tried to catch up with him again later, and Jay's like, "No.
Please get out of my face."
So you can book it two ways. Either you hot shot the title back onto Bron because you realized Goldberg's here. You should have just get the belt back on him. Which just makes all the good things I said about Breakker losing the belt 3 weeks ago, I take back. This is a bad way to do it. But if you do that, Jay can then go, "Oh, maybe I'm not as strong without my family." Don't think that's
no.
I think story.
I think it works better if Jimmy literally saves him from Bron. Maybe he beats him clean. Bron goes for the attack afterwards, and Jimmy makes the save.
Or Bron tries to cheat some way, and Jimmy stops him from cheating.
That feels out of character from Bron, though.
Yeah.
I think Jay just beating him clean, and then Bron kind of, raging out afterwards for this. Jimmy runs in with some super kicks and whatnot, sending him packing. And that's the closing angle, is just the shot of Jimmy standing tall, looking at Jay downfall, and while Jay looks up at Jimmy saving him.
I had a whole theory about Bron's character a couple of weeks, that he always wins the rematch. because he is inexperienced. He's younger. So he, first time against Sami Zayn, I lose because I do press-ups.
Yeah.
But the second time, I'm not going to make that mistake because I learn. I'm a smart wrestler.
I agree. But I go back to the point that I made when Jay first won this title, which was only 2 weeks ago, like 2-3 weeks ago, was like, if your whole story of this is, it's been 14 years for him to win his first singles title, he should have it for longer than 3 weeks.
Yeah. They put themselves into quite a bit of a corner, I think, here.
I don't think that they have, because I think you can have Jay beat him. Jay is inarguably a bigger star than Bron Breakker is.
But where does Breakker go from this?
It doesn't help Bron in any way, but Jay should feel like the bigger star than Bron is, particularly because he likely is going to go into that War Games match.
After that, speaking of big people called Bron, we got Adam Pearce doing a sit-down interview with Bronson Reed.
This had a real stench of, well, we don't have to film this on the same day that we're doing a full Raw episode, so should we do a multi-camera setup? Yeah, should we do multiple takes of this? Yeah, I mean, we've got half a day to do this.
Yeah.
No, let's do it. Well, should we have a look around? Should we see where we want to do this? Where do we want to set the chairs up?
It was nice.
It was
a
nice.
Nice little change. So Pearce is like, can you stop beating everyone? Can you stop ruining the backstage environment? And Reed's like, no. Let me face Seth Rollins. Look, I'm here to make a name for myself. And I'm going to do that by beating Seth Rollins. So give me a one-on-one match, and I won't have to, endanger fans and referees.
Yeah.
I like the motivation, and I like it even more when Adam Pearce later goes to talk to Seth backstage, and Seth drops the whole goofy gimmick, and he's just talking seriously to Pearce like, look, that's how this game works. I'm at the top. I'm a veteran. He's going to come for my spot. I've got to beat him to put him back in his place.
Yeah. I really like that. I don't think that Seth just dropped his gimmick, though, because Seth cut a serious promo last week after he had done the goofy stuff.
At the end, though.
But this is what he always does. It's the big goofy entrance, it's the ha-ha-ha-ha, and then go into the serious side of things. Then the following week, you can go back to the flamboyance one again.
Pearce looked concerned at the end of all this.
Well, you should do. Just worry for Seth's safety.
Yeah, but also Pearce seemed... I don't know what his apprehension here was, because first he was concerned about the referees and the fans, and Bronson's like, well, I won't, beat them up if I get the one-on-one match. So Pearce is like, well, I'll go and check with Seth. And Seth's like, yeah, cool, give me the one-on-one match. And Pearce is like, But the match is on.
Yeah. I think Adam Pearce is right to be worried about it.
In between those two segments, we had American Alpha come out. Are they called American Alpha?
Yeah, no, the Alpha Academy.
Alpha Academy, sorry.
I've also read American Alpha, oddly, in my notes.
Yeah, that's definitely not them.
No.
American Alpha is...
Chad Gable and Jason Jordan. But oddly, I did write down American Alpha.
So this was the War Raiders repackaging, the old Viking experience. They came out, they had their old music back, and they pretty much squashed Otis and Akira Tozawa.
Yeah, you want to talk about some drop balls here, like not capitalizing on that momentum for Otis from a few months back. Crikey,
shame.
He is not the position that he was just a few months back. And they were just acting like hugely squashed in this segment, which it should be, is the War Raiders return. They should win in a dominating fashion. It kind of sucks that it comes at the expense of Otis, but their new finish is very cool.
Yeah,
it's like a back suplex throw into a splash. Very, really cool. Like in mid-air, you sort of catch them. Called the Fallout. Really, really good. Nice to see them back as the War Raiders with their old NXT music as well. I wish they were still Hanson and Rowe. Like they'd also gone back to those names, because I think those are cooler than Eric and Ivar. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, this has been ruined. It's not the way I want it.
I think the War Raiders is the better name to have here if you're going to choose one.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll win the tournament? I feel like they will.
I think New Day win the tournament.
You think
New Day win the tournament, and they go on to face the Judgment Day for the tag titles.
We got the Cody Rhodes promo that we've already covered.
You could so tell that some of these segments were filmed not last week.
Yeah.
Because the crowd ah! And then when they go in the segment, they're literally faded down, and then it's just silence.
I will say, in that Adam Pearce and Seth segment, that's where Seth said he slays beasts, he conquers monsters. So beasts, that was the Brock Lesnar thing we alluded to earlier as well. Then we got Kofi Kingston versus Bron Breakker. I'm like, cool. Here's our wrestling match. About 7 minutes, 3 minutes in the air break.
Yeah, Breakker hit the spear for the win. Wendu hit the spear again afterwards, but Woods ran down to make the save. Woods speared him, and then Jay ran down to make another save, and he hit a spear of his own.
Mm-hmm. And then Bron Breakker was like, yeah, I'm still going to get you, though. Super kick.
Yeah.
So that was... They did a little recap of the New Day at the end of last week's episode, where Xavier was like, look, you should have stuck with my plan. And Kofi's like, I'm not going to leave Jey Uso to get beaten up by himself. Mm-hmm. But Woods is like, yeah, but then we all got beaten up. So still, they're making you empathize with both sides. It's very well done.
I'm still enjoying this. Still really like it. We also
just wish the wrestling got more time.
I do too. But I feel like that is going to be the new... You know, like when Raw first went to 3 hours and every reviewer was like, 3 hours is long. 3 hours is long. 3 hours is a bit too long. Like, I think that's what podcasts are going to be now for the next year is not a lot of wrestling on the show, a lot of wrestling in the ad breaks. And then we'll just get used to it again. In the same way that most people got used to the 3 hours. Just before that...
want me to settle, is what you're saying.
Well, that is what WWE have asked you to do for 40 years. So, yeah, I think they do want you to just settle. Just before that Kofi match, we had a promo for Dragon Lee. Very cool video promo for him. I wrote here, I guess they're not getting Rey Fenix. They now need to push this guy instead.
Rhea Ripley talks to Damian Priest backstage. That's when they sort of said, you should move on because you've beaten all the Judgment Day boys
quite easily
multiple times.
Yeah.
And then that's neither of us think that's actually going to happen.
Like Finn Balor and JD, if memory serves, I think have lost more tag matches than they have defended the tag titles.
It's ridiculous. Who would you have Damian Priest feud against imminently, if not the Judgment Day?
Bron Breakker. If you're not going to do it, if you're not putting the belt on Bron next week, Priest and Breakker sounds fun.
Yes. Drew McIntyre, I think, could be...
Drew would be good. I just got to come back to the
because
Rumble.
It was Priest who...
I mean,
they had the title feud.
I wouldn't hate that either.
Maybe Bron's better.
Actually, no, I really like Drew. I think it's a really good option.
Jay's walking backstage. That's where he sees Jimmy. We've covered that. R-Truth versus The Miz. Well, I'm not super excited about them having a wrestling match, but surely this one will be a wrestling match.
No, we've got a Wyatt tease in this. Some comedy with R-Truth, and the Final Testament came down, and Truth rolled up Miz for the win. I think this went less than a minute, about 30 seconds.
A minute, yeah. And then R-Truth got out, was celebrating. He hugged Miz, which I did laugh at. That was funny. He celebrated with the guy he beat.
I'm glad you got something out of it.
And he rolled out, and Karrion... This was also good.
Karrion was very good here.
Karrion Kross was like, yeah, good work, man. As soon as he walks past him, his face drops. Get him, boys.
He said to say AOP to get him.
And AOP, the goons, throw Truth into the ring. And rather than Miz being like annoyed at the guys who distracted him to lose, which was the Final Testament coming out, he just hit a skull-crushing finale and laid out Truth. And I thought, well, okay, now there'll be a bit more, because surely Miz has to interact with Karrion somehow. And then we went to ad break.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is all just a backdrop for the Wyatts feuding with Final Testament, which, man, like, even... Because American Made didn't feel like a tippity-top team. This feels like a huge step down for the Wyatts.
But American Made had just formed. Chad was in the Intercontinental title picture. Fresh heel turn. They were over. And, it's the debut storyline. It doesn't need to be with the biggest faction. It's just, here's an introductory program to get them over to explain who they are, and then they win. Next step, go up one. At least the Judgment Day.
Yeah. Who are a bunch of losers.
Yeah.
And never win anything. But this, feuding with Final Testament feels like a major, major step down. And it concerns me that it's going to lead to some R-Truth comedy.
Yes.
Which I don't think the Wyatts need.
Definitely not in their second program.
Yeah.
And the main event was Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton versus Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan. Raquel doesn't do her back pose anymore.
No, she's got terrible glasses now. She's got these terrible sunglasses. That's her new gimmick. She came out with these sunglasses. I was like, you look like a tool.
But she also, her attire looks a little bit Ripley-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally, it felt like the Spider-Men pointing at each other.
My favorite review I've seen of this match is that Raquel tagged in and more edits happened.
Was it edited?
Well, it's a taped show.
Yeah.
So you can just cut around like any flubs and stuff. So, because there was fan footage last week of Raquel slamming Rhea Ripley, but she basically slams her into Tiffany Stratton by accident. And when she tagged in here, like they edited around that on the broadcast. And then here it was just like, oh, this feels a lot more edited than the rest of the match did.
Well, Ripley and Tiffany argue early on, and then Raquel, this is a pretty cool move, Raquel powerbombs Liv over the top rope onto them.
Very cool spot.
Which was the third one woman using another woman as a weapon on some women's spot.
Huh. Did you look at that?
Because you also had the Cargill Belair one, you had the Kyrie elbow off Io, and this.
And I would say that I thought this was the most impressive one. I thought it was a really cool spot.
I mean, I've written here, I thought Raquel looked good considering this is her return from injury, but if you're saying it's smoke and mirrors, that explains it.
Well, I'm glad you wrote that. Maybe I'm being facetious in all this, because my note, everyone's like, they boringly work over Tiffany Stratton.
Well, I was more like, I hope she's not injured or, feeling the effects of her condition. Ripley gets a hot tag and, immediately beats Liv.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's just like, so Ripley's role in this was she easily beat up Liv, easily beat up Rhea, then Tiffany got worked over, then Ripley tagged in and easily beat up Liv again and had Liv beaten.
Yeah, she had it won within 30 seconds of her hot tag, hit the Riptide on Morgan, but Raquel breaks it up. Ripley's going to hit another Riptide on the outside. Nia Jax comes in, beats everyone up.
I don't know why Nia attacked Rhea Ripley.
Because she was annoyed that Rhea got involved in her business on Friday. But she beats up Liv the most, I will say.
Yeah, she does.
And then I actually really enjoyed this moment. Liv's down in the corner.
Yeah. Nia's
standing there. Tiffany is standing there. And Nia's just like... the gestures with her arms.
No, I thought Nia was awesome.
Yeah.
She suddenly was like, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And Tiffany's like, yeah, you're right. It is a good idea. She runs out. She gets the briefcase. She comes in and Nia's like, this is great. This is great. She goes to cash in. And then Dominic pulls Liv out the ring. I thought it was actually a very good final angle.
Yeah. Do you think Tiffany was slow on purpose?
No. I don't think so.
I think this is sincere from Tiff.
I think it's sincere from Tiff. Because she is heading for the babyface turn. So I don't think that she is screwing around. Although ultimately she will cash in on Nia.
Yeah. Maybe Nia will keep bullying her, and that's how it'll work. I thought that was the end of the show, by the way. Pretty down, not downbeat, but it felt like how a weak angle would end a show a couple of years ago.
Yes, yeah, I think that's good. It's taped show syndrome. This really did feel like a taped show.
But one thing I can applaud this episode for was the amount of time it gave the women.
Yeah, 2 women's matches.
And you know what? I'm not realizing this until I just said it. Without Dominic Mysterio everywhere.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
he was in the very last moment, but other than that, it was like everyone was allowed to wrestle themselves.
I am so over Rhea versus Liv as a program, but at least the Women's World Championship felt like it was focused on in this show, and the Women's World Champion herself felt like she got some moments on this show.
Yeah. Overall, I gave it pretty low score actually for this era of Raw. I gave it 66%.
Yeah, I guess I think it's hard to kind of score it because it is just a taped show. But it also felt like a taped show that didn't try. I had this with Dynamite last week, and I took some flack for this, understandably so. But I took some flack for this last week, where I was like, Dynamite felt like a show that knew it wasn't going to be NXT in the ratings, so didn't bother trying. And this was a show that was like, well, we're a taped show, so we don't really need to try.
Yeah,
and I'm the viewing audience here, so I feel that I've wasted my time.
Before we get on with the remaining chat gables, let's say a very big thank you to our wonderful Patreons, our Pledgehammers, who get a shout out on this episode and their own wrestling nickname. Go to patreon.com/WrestleTalk to find out how you can get your own shout out and watch loads of exclusive content.
Like us reviewing TNA currently, as we are looking at Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle. We've done Genesis, we have done Turning Point, both from those 2006. Our next episode, which will be out later this month, is Final Resolution 2007. And then we've got 2 more episodes, 2 more Kurt Angle Samoa Joe singles matches before we then move into our next series, our next story arc for WrestleTalk Extra.
So a big thank you to the Blade Bearer, Christopher Sordillo.
Hey now, you're an all-star, Chuck Turner.
The Razor's Edge, CJ Sharp.
Daniel Sweet Mexican Chocolate Ibarra.
On top of the world and the top rope, David Sansone.
Going, David Vaughn.
A tall, handsome guy who has goals in life, Deolonta Blaine.
Dr. Hook, Nolan Evans.
Always shining, Garrett Albright.
Hannah A, baby.
Geordie bus driver, Harry.
And lastly, for this Hall of Fame class, on the 15th of October 2024, the Gaelic Storm, Heather Murphy.
Thank you very much, everyone there. Patreon.com/WrestleTalk. That's how to get your own. Right, remaining chat Gables. Akihiko Sanada says, you know how long he's been waiting for this? Woo, Bronson's going to make a name for himself. All jokes aside, their match should be fantastic so long as Bronson picks up the win. Seth isn't really hurt by losses at this stage of his career.
I also hope that Bron does win, whatever match they do have.
Bronson?
Yes.
Or Bron?
Bronson, yes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
What happened was when Bron's son comes in.
Sorg.
And he has a match. But what if Bron's son has a match with Bronson?
And Braun's... and Braun's son as well?
And Braun Strowman. Braun Strawman is the guy he gets his straw from, is at ringside.
I feel like WWE has a Braun issue right now, the same way AEW has a Paige issue.
Well, they got rid of Ethan.
And Cage. Paige and Cage.
Paige and Cage was a bit of a thing for a while. And they still have Christian and Brian.
Yeah.
But they did get rid of Ethan, which has made it easier for Hangman.
And Diamond Dallas Page.
Well, yeah, he's off with Cody now, isn't he?
Aaron Hamrahan, 37-month member. Hi, guys. I just let you know that I will be doing an episode featuring, in my opinion, the worst match ever. Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler. Peak heel Cole. Awful.
That is one of the episodes we will be doing for worst match ever at some point. That might be a Patreon one because then we can put it up. So the bonus of the Patreon worst match ever is that we don't have to load them up to YouTube and have YouTube flag them and take them down. We can load them straight to Patreon, which means we can have the full matches on screen and stuff. So maybe we'll do that one as a Patreon because it's fun to have the match there.
God, it's so bad, that match.
Do you know that match is, with all the entrances, half an hour long?
Ash Vanash Anthony, who's a 14-month member, says, acknowledge me. Love you all. Shout out to Workhorse Wrestling Network. Congrats to Zack Sabre Jr. and thank you, Bryan Danielson. He had all his final matches against The Shield. Yeah, you saw this?
Yeah, we talked about this on the Wrestle Dream Review podcast, myself and Satini Yangi. Go check that out over on the WrestleTalk main channel. His final WWE match was against... His final Raw match, I think, is against Seth. His final WWE match was against Roman, and his final in-ring full-time match was against Dean.
Yeah. They run the wrestling world, really.
Yeah.
And finally, for now, Heiku says, Luke, I want to apologize for provoking such a visceral response last week, bringing up brand warfare. I did want to clarify that I only meant for a pair of 5v5 tags, absolutely not the whole show. I feel like there is a story with top stars fighting for number 30.
That's the pitch I've been making for years before then. But brand warfare does so little for me. They even said the word bragging rights on this show when talking about champion versus champion. Way back, I was like, all about the bragging rights. I'm like, ugh,
disgusting.
No. Gross.
Shall we end the poll? Let's see what people thought of this episode.
For our second week in a row when it comes to Raw reviews, it is mid. It is 56% mid, wow. 31% thumbs up.
Even lower than what I rated it as. Interesting. Well, thanks very much. Please go over to the No Rolls Barred link in the video description below to get your tickets for a bunch of shows, live shows this week if you're available. And go over to patreon.com/WrestleTalk to get loads more exclusive WrestleTalk content. But for now, I've been Ollie Davis. It's been Luke Owen, DAD. Jam that jam.
Jam that jam.